Good morning and welcome fellow councillors, officers and members of the public to South Kesteven Finance, Economic Development and Corporate Services Overview Scrutiny Committee on a wet, miserable Tuesday, 22nd of November 2022. I'm Councillor Helen Crawford and I'll be chairing the meeting today. Can we make sure phones are turned off with one exception? Thank you. I'm not aware of any fire drill taking place today, so if the fire alarm does sound, then please vacate the building via the stairs, and the meeting point is out at the front in the green, and everybody's mobile phones will be turned off. Thank you. Please be aware that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed via YouTube. Please ensure that your microphones are turned off when not speaking. And I have with me today Vice Chairman Ben Green. Before we go to item 1 on the agenda, I've been asked by Councillor Reid, as he has another meeting shortly, if we could bring up item 12 on the agenda, which is the changing places. So we will bring that, and that will be in item 8 now, if everybody's happy with that. Okay, lovely. So we'll go to item 1 on the agenda. Do we have any public speakers?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. No public speakers today.
Lovely. And apologies for absent.
Apologies have been received from Councillor John Dawson. Councillor Dilks will be representing Alliance SK on the committee today. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. And item 3, disclosures of interest. If anybody has any, please make me aware now, or if you think of any later on, then please make me aware then. Do I have any? No. Lovely. Item 4, minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of September 2022. Is everybody happy with those? Councillor Knowles?
Yes, forgive me, Chair. I know perhaps this should have been brought up earlier, but I've been sort of unavailable for the last week or so. Don't wish to amend the minutes, but I mentioned something that has been mentioned before, that the minutes are very comprehensive when it comes to the presentation of the minutes, the record of the minutes, and yet the comments made as questions are not. At last time at this meeting, I raised 3 or 4 items under on page 9 of that long list, and it's a one-liner, and it's a one-liner that doesn't really mean anything when it's read in without context. And so the minutes and the questions are recorded without any context of what they say, and so they're meaningless. For instance, some fish catchers were nearing an area for concern. That doesn't give any context at all of what was meant in when I just talked to that. Or why were salary costs high when vacancies had increased in numbers? Sounds like a silly question, but in the context of when I asked it, I don't believe it was that silly. But I believe that this is not an unusual happening, and that the minutes don't record the context of questions because they are a series of one-liners when it's put to the meeting. And I feel that should be considered and addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Some of that might be my fault because I probably forgot about it by the time I got the minutes. But we will look into that for future. Okay, it's written on my list, so we'll look into it. Councillor Baxter, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. A similar point. If you look on page 9, we've got a whole page of questions and comments. If they do relate to the comments from the leader and the officers over the page, it's very difficult to map them across. In my opinion, we come to scrutiny, we ask all these questions, we don't get any answer. Oh, we don't get answers to all the questions we ask, and that's the problem with scrutiny generally.
Thank you. Right. Members of the committee, are we happy with the minutes? And if we are, could I have a proposer and a seconder, please? Councillor Johnson proposing a seconder, please. Councillor Susan Sandal, thank you. All those in favour? Lovely, and that's unanimous. Thank you. Sorry. Item 5, the action sheet. We've completed 27, 22. We've got that on the agenda today, and item 30 is being completed. Is everybody happy with that? Councillor Dilks?
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, the first one is on 29. Is that we were due to get a verbal update today? I don't know if we're going to get it. It's not an agenda item, I notice, and perhaps should it be, or what's the position on that? Is the first question. And on the second one, the item 30, St Martin's Park Works. It was me that asked for if we could get that a copy of the surveyor's report by emailing. I've not received it. I don't know if anybody else has. I don't. Well, forgive me if I've missed it, but I've been looking for it and haven't found it. I wonder if I could get one.
Debbie?
It was me that asked for it.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that, and I did get it. I'm sure I got it and read.
I did send a copy through to Democracy to share with all the members of the committee. I can resend it, it's fine.
Yes, please, if you could resend it to the committee members, thank you.
If I could get one. Yeah, it might be helpful, Madam Chairman, if when we put in under the comment status report, when the email is sent, and then rather than trawling through all your emails, you know, and looking for a magic word, and I put in St Martin's Park and it hasn't come up, you know, if we put a date in there when the email was sent, that would in future that would be really helpful to all members, I'm sure. Thank you.
Hello, Alison. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can provide an update on action point 29. So this specifically related to cyber security. As members are aware, the council received £150,000 to implement a cyber security action plan. An update on the plan is 32 actions were identified. To date, 19 have been completed, 9 are in progress, and 4 have not been started. And I can confirm that these actions will all be implemented by February 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor?
Would it be helpful then to put that on the agenda for the February meeting or thereabouts?
We can put that on the action plan. Councillor Baxter?
Thank you. Following up on Councillor Dilks's comment about the survey, I couldn't find the email either. That might be, it would be helpful to know when it was sent out, but also the question was not just a survey report, there were 2. There was the survey report before the works began, where it was said that the 1904 building could be retained by the professional surveyor. And then there was the subsequent survey where another professional surveyor said, oh no, it's too late, it's done for. And we wanted to understand the differences between the 2. And to do that, we obviously need to see the 2. Have we been sent the 2?
I'm just forwarding it now for you, Councillor Baxter, and then if you've got any questions, I'm more than happy at the end to talk through those.
Right. So that's that one done. So item 6, announcements or updates from the leader of the council, cabinet members or head of paid services. Do I have any, please? No. Okay, that was quick and easy. Item 7, localised tax. Councillor Baxter.
Point of order.
If you've got a point of order, can you tell me where it is in the constitution then, please?
It's in part 4,
Thank you.
rules for procedures of meetings, and it relates to the item which is not actually in the constitution. Item 6 is not actually in the constitution, announcements or updates from the leader of the council. I would just like to point out, Chair, that in the scrutiny action plan draft that was rejected by the Governance and Audit Committee last time round, one of the solutions that had been provided to the woeful lack of scrutiny in this council is that an agenda item had been added on to overview scrutiny committees called announcements or updates from leader of the council, cabinet members or head of paid service. Since that was introduced in about July, we have had no updates or announcements from any of these people at any meeting. So it's hardly adding to the quality of scrutiny at this council that no one ever brings us any information to scrutinise.
Thank you. I thought that's what the agenda was for, but that could be me. Item 7 then, thank you. Localised council tax support scheme, and I believe we have Claire Moses. Sorry, it's Adam, is it? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So the report in front of you, the recommendation is to recommend to Cabinet the proposed local council tax support scheme for 23-24 after considering the feedback from recent consultation. So each year the council are required to review their council tax support scheme to determine its sustainability and consider any potential changes for the following financial year. When the scheme came into effect on the 1st of April 2013, the council agreed to a scheme which provides 80% entitlement for working age claimants. Despite the scheme being a local scheme, due to the nature of protection provided to pensioners and vulnerable working age customers, there will always be an element of cost that the council has to incur and for which it has no influence over. Due to the protection from changes to pensioners and vulnerable working age customers, any savings to be made to the proposed scheme can only be applied to the working age, which is 20.79% of the caseload. This means out of the current council spend of £635,127, only £135,043 can be influenced by a change to the current scheme. The scheme is determined locally by the council, having undertaken consultation with precepting authorities, key stakeholders and residents. Consultation of a no change scheme took place during October with support from 84.07% of respondents. However, following the autumn statement announcements on the 17th of November 2022, officers have undertaken additional modelling to reflect changes to the benefits rating of 10.7% and a potential council tax increase to understand the impact this will have on the cost of the no change scheme. I will hand over to Claire Moses, Head of Revenues, Benefits and Customer Services, who will give a verbal update following that autumn statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Councillor Stokes. As detailed in paragraph 1.1, the actual cost of the discount scheme for 23-24 will not be known for certain until the end of this financial year and will be dependent on actual caseload in year, as well as levels of council tax set by the District Council and major precepting authorities. Additionally, as Councillor Stokes has advised in his introduction, officers are currently modelling the changes to the scheme as a result of the autumn statement. Unfortunately, this information is still being modelled and is not available for this meeting. The complexities of the changes from the autumn statement mean that there is a 10.1% increase in benefits for various people in receipt of new state pension, basic state pension, pension credit, and the enhanced daily rate component for personal independence payments, along with universal credit increases. We need to make sure that the increases are correct and accurate, as well as understanding the impact that this could have on our scheme. An increase in benefits could result in a decrease in the council tax support that's awarded, and this may have an impact on our scheme percentage of the 80%. If that is the case, then we need to consider whether or not we would amend our scheme to support those residents affected by the benefit increase. As advised in the report, it's proposed that South Kesteven don't make any changes to their scheme, and that was supported by over 80% of respondents. We do have a generous scheme at the moment, but as I say, the autumn statement may have impact on this. In addition, the scheme enables South Kesteven to support care leavers, special constables, both paid and voluntary, and provide additional financial support through the discretionary payment fund, which is fully funded by South Kesteven. We also support through the Household Support Fund, which is in its third phase for this financial year and will be launched later this week. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have regarding the report.
Thank you very much, Claire. Do I have any? Councillor Dilks.
Yes, thank you. A bit concerned about the survey and the numbers in it, and I take the report that's just been given that 80% of respondents support what the council's doing, but is that 80% of 26 or whatever the number is? I can't remember. It's a very low number. 80% of 26 is not very many. Oh, it's 27. Sorry, not 26. 27. God, we've got another one. 80% of 27 is not very many. So, you know, to take it as, you know, we've got mass support, 80% support is a little bit sort of pushing the boat out a bit, perhaps. Which kind of leads me to sort of say, you know, question the survey really, and are we doing the best, you know, that we can possibly do in the surveys that we put out, not for next year, but perhaps for not for this year, but perhaps for next. You know, how can we improve that response rate? You know, the response rate of 27 is 0.000 whatever it is percent, which, you know, I've worked in direct mail, and, you know, 0.5% is fine for a cold mailing, but if it's your house that, you know, that the people have actually got an interest, haven't they? And you would expect a better response than 0. whatever it is percent. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think, unfortunately, we can make people, you know, and if people don't want to respond to a survey, you can't make them, and that's it. Claire, would you like to come back?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chairman. We have looked at the way in which we issue consultation through various methods. So in previous years, we have written to everybody in receipt of council tax support. So for the 22-23 survey, we did send 8,236 surveys out to every resident. And at that point, we only had a 3.74% response. So this year, mindful of the cost of issuing out surveys, we did do a social media updates. Our website was updated. We updated key stakeholders such as Citizens Advice so that they were able to support in the response as well. I do acknowledge that the response rate is low, but then in addition, sending out to over 8,000, we did only receive just over 3% responses.
No, thanks for that. I take the point. You can take a horse to water, and you can, but and I'm also mindful of the costs. But you know, if you have had a look at it, it's worth looking at, thinking next year, can we do any more? You know, but they are woefully low, aren't they? It's sad, really, but there we are. Thank you.
And if we've sent them out by post to each individual address, you can't do any more, can you? Ben?
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you for that update. I just wanted to confirm if students have an exemption in there as well, because it's not inconceivable that we have students in the district who could be attending Nottingham University, Nottingham Trent, Lincoln, or even further afield. And I think secondly, just a small comment and you know, perhaps a bit of a suggestion with regards to the autumn statement. Obviously, that was last week. It feels like there's been quite a major knock-on effect for the contents of this report. It might have just been useful, perhaps in retrospect, and only in retrospect, to have had a bit of an interpretation of what that would mean and imply for this report prior to this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chairman. We don't specifically have a separate support for students. We do in council tax, so students do receive a council tax disregard, so they don't have any council tax to pay. Therefore, because they don't have any liability for council tax, they wouldn't receive council tax support.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions? Councillor Dilks.
Thank you. I wanted to ask questions about the on page 20, the Special Constabulary Council Tax Discount Scheme. I'm pleased that it's now up and running. It's took a long time to sort of, for frankly, the PCC to come back and negotiate and you know, actually get the scheme up and running, which was his scheme in the first place that I and others supported. I know that there are currently in the current year 3 special constables in receipt of the discount. How much does it actually cost us as a council to give those 3 the discount, and what is the maximum potential cost to this council of the scheme, please?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chairman. So for the three that are in receipt of the discount, currently it's circa £800. It's a 25% discount for their liability. And for all of those that were identified by the Police and Crime Commissioner last year, it was circa £9,500 that we could have paid had all of the constabulary applied for, special constables applied for it.
Yeah, thanks. Is that the total discount or the cost to this council, you know, i.e. of the 1/9?
Sorry, that's the total discount.
I thought what I'm asking is what's the cost to this council? And that was the problem when we, you know, when the cabinet actually recommended that we shouldn't do this originally. And I think it went to full council and we sort of changed. Oh, no, forgive me, Adam, but I think you decided to do it once you could see it was on the agenda, wasn't it? And that we were going to sort of bring it. I think I put a motion in to sort of, and so it was accepted by the council that we'd do it. And I remember saying at the time, it's not going to cost us very much money. And actually, the amount that was put in it, you know, the amount that it was estimated to cost was a total cost of what other councils would contribute, i.e. that Lincolnshire County Council would be the biggest contributor to it, wouldn't it? And of course the police budget bit. But what I'm interested in is how much is it currently costing this council to have three? Because I remember at the time saying it ain't going to cost very much. And I think I'd just like those figures if we can have them.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chairman. So the cost of the scheme is 100% borne by South Kesteven District Council. It isn't shared across Lincolnshire County Council or the Police Authority because it is a local discount scheme that we agreed to adopt.
Well, then that got changed, did it? Did that get changed after the? Originally, it was, you know, that it was. The discount was going to be the 25% or whatever it was, and that would be off your total council tax bill. But of course, only a percentage, is it a 1/9, is district council paid. I don't know if Richard can help.
No, Madam Chairman, it's always been the case that as Claire's just outlined, the reason at the time, the reason Cabinet were mindful not to incorporate into the scheme was because all the other districts in the county had changed their position on it. So we were all going to go as a county as one, which makes perfect sense because otherwise it becomes a postcode lottery as to where you live in the county. But that's exactly what we have ended up with. Only two councils have gone forward with it, which is why the cabinet at the time were reluctant to take it forward because our partners decided at the last minute not to incorporate it. But as you now know, we have incorporated it from the inception anyway.
Thank you, Claire, again.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chairman. I'm just looking at the report that came to this committee on the 23rd of November 2021. Paragraph 7.5 states, should the council wish to approve the proposal of the council tax discount for police special constables, this will be a direct cost to the general fund of circa £9,564 for awards relating to 21-22.
Thanks for that clarification. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. Do I have any other questions? Are we happy then for the recommendations to the committee? The recommendations are to recommend to Cabinet the proposed local council tax support scheme for 2023-24 after considering the feedback from the recent consultation. Do I have a proposer? Councillor Susan Sandal, seconder. Councillor Paul Woods, all those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. That's been carried. Thank you. Now, as we said, item 12 is now going to become item 8. So that's the update on changing places, toilet facilities. Who's presenting this? Is it Robert? Councillor Reid, thank you.
Good morning, Chairman, and good morning, members. I'm pleased to give an update on the changing places for the toilet facilities project. In March 22, the Department of Levelling Up for Housing and Communities informed the council that its bid had been successful and that it had been awarded a maximum of £160,000 equally across 4 sites. The funding is awarded to cover a 2-year period for completion of the project. Feasibility has been undertaken on each of the 4 sites by SKDC's building surveys, Banks and Long and Co, which provided initial scheme designs and budgetary costings for each of the sites. From the review of the 4 schemes, initial designs for the Mears Leisure Centre in Grantham and the Southeast toilets in Bourne have been agreed, and we are looking forward to progressing these 2 projects during 22-23's financial year. But the contractors are currently being engaged via the Changing Places Support Team's approved contract list. For the review of the designs in relation to Abbey Gardens toilets, Grantham and the Shack, Stamford, specific consideration issues have been identified, and this will require further investigation in order for the sites to be brought forward for the financial year of 23-24. It might well be, Madam Chairman and members, that we may need to find alternative sites for these 2 positions and for these 2 towns, and therefore it might be necessary for us to find a fallback position so that we don't lose the much valued bid. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Do I have any questions from anybody? Councillor Knowles?
Thank you, Chair. Bourne is very keen to move ahead with this as quickly as possible. So a simple question is, when do we anticipate it being finished? But in addition to that, we were requested as Bourne Town Council for further funding towards it, which we, under the circumstances and after some comments that Richard made, it didn't seem appropriate. And the second thing is we are making urgent inquiries and not really getting further forward with who is going to own it, who is going to manage it, who is going to pay for the maintenance of it, and so on and so forth. And we wonder why these negotiations, or not negotiations, why these discussions are not going ahead quickly, and why we don't know an answer to those questions just yet. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you. Do I have somebody who wishes to answer that? Thank you.
I can answer that. I'm just questioning whether it's appropriate in the public meeting to have a debate about Bourne Town Council. It's probably best for officers and town council representatives to meet directly and have that discussion in a safe environment.
Okay, could you arrange then a meeting with Councillor Knowles and the town clerk?
And in terms of the implementation, we're obviously securing contractors, but you'll appreciate this is a national scheme, and therefore the number of suppliers that are accredited with the work is extremely limited. So the sourcing of the approved contractors, which we need to meet for the grant criteria, is proving quite challenging. So I can't at this time give an update on when implementation will start.
Thank you. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, I'd like to thank the officer who got in touch with me about to explain the lack of a venue in the Deepings. I completely understand with the changing goalposts of the national government scheme, it's difficult to get venues to fit. We did try to find a venue to fit. The demise of a Deepings Leisure Centre hasn't helped. That would be the obvious place to put one of these. But notwithstanding that, I know that despite the report not mentioning the Deepings hasn't been forgotten in terms of the officers wanting to deliver these services for us. So I'm grateful.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's really just to say, look, I think this is an incredibly positive thing that we are doing. I have had personally meetings with the Grantham Disabled Children's Society as well as the national team at the Changing Places. What we are doing is supporting particularly families with those that have children and young adults and adults indeed, to provide them with the dignity that they rightly deserve. It is an incredibly positive thing we are looking to do, and I hope that there will be future funding rounds so we can look at further schemes in different areas as well.
Thank you. Councillor Reid, did I see your hand up?
Just to confirm that not only did the officer, but I did also have my thoughts on market deeping as well. That's actually one of my first questions. I'd got 4, not 5 towns, and indeed you were remembered at the very onset. Secondly, I'd just like to confirm, Madam Chairman, that I am having a meeting about the criteria with the town clerk, which I had aforementioned to you that is premature at this moment, but the work has been done and I will be following it through. Thank you. Bourne, sorry.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions? So everybody's happy and that we note the changes of the update of changing places. Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Knowles.
Thank you. If I understand Councillor Reid correctly, the negotiations with Bourne are likely to be the town clerk with a member of the town council. Is that appropriate for a matter of this importance, that it's two people, one of which is a town councillor who happens to be running the scheme and is not involving other people from Bourne Town Council?
Councillor Reid.
As Councillor Knowles well knows, this was discussed at a relevant town council meeting quite recently, and I was tasked with going back about some of the criteria, and it was an update on the criteria for him and the procedure that we need to follow. So I will be advising both ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think through you, ultimately, I think it is up to Bourne Town Council as to who they wish to send as representatives to this meeting. And it's not for us to dictate to them who they wish to be there. So I presume, obviously, Councillor Knowles, you are on Bourne Town Council as well. I'm sure you can go back to Bourne Town Council and request further representation at that meeting.
Sorry, we now go to agenda item 9, which is the progress update on the new South Kesteven Economic Development Strategy 2023 to 2028. Who's presenting this? Councillor Cook, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So obviously through you, this is most definitely a first draft of this economic development strategy for 23 to 28. Bringing it to FEDCO before we consult wider across the district, including with businesses, key stakeholders and business representation groups across the entire district. I really do want this to be representative of the views and thoughts of our business community, because ultimately it is the private sector that grow our economy, and us as a district should do everything we can in our power to enable the private sector to grow, to create more jobs and to deliver for our district. Obviously, we do have a need to bring forward a new strategy given the events of the last 2 years, where the previous strategy has expired. Obviously, Invest SK business plans have ended when the team moved into SKDC in April of this year. The strategy provides an update on key local intelligence, economic intelligence gleaned from the Office of National Statistics and other recognised sources of information. It highlights, amongst others, the continued growth in population of both households, but also business startups, which is incredibly popular. And I think it's positive that people want to come and live here in our district, but also that businesses also want to grow and set up in our business. The intelligence also highlights our key sectors across the district in terms of business stock and employment around manufacturing, construction, retail and wholesale, accommodation, food services, professional, scientific and technical, business administration and support services. We can also see the huge reliance we place on our micro business community with 5,500 businesses in our district, and many of which that operate in the rural communities as well as we know, not just in the towns. So based on this intelligence and the work of the economic development team in dealing with businesses, the inward investments, the investors, the landowners and developers, we've been able to set a vision for the life of this strategy, which is really about having that thriving market towns that we can all be proud of. A buoyant and resilient economy that includes national companies with local roots and a strong, vibrant business base. A culture of celebrating enterprise and innovation through new business creation, an enabling and proactive approach to new and inward investment and developer inquiries, but to be a district recognised for higher level skills to delivery and attainment. To grow job numbers through higher skilled, high paid employments, creating opportunities for young people, to make sure that housing and commercial developments are delivered in parallel to meet the needs of both future employers and also residents. And as I said earlier, to make it as easy as possible for businesses and visitors to access our district and to make sure that we are well connected as a district. It is the vision in particular where we welcome thoughts from the consultation process. The consultation will be an ongoing hopefully from today, will ultimately lead to an adopted strategy from the 1st of April next year. And anyone who wishes to input more directly or would like to have individual meetings with businesses, I know John Hine would also welcome the opportunity to discuss this. I am pleased also that there is a strong reference to how we will measure the success of the plan and links to relevant KPIs to make sure that we are getting our value for money in terms of what we are doing as a district. I look forward to an action plan being developed over the coming months that will accompany the official launch of the strategy next year. It is at very early days, and I'm really keen to actually get out there. I was at Grantham Business Club on Friday speaking to their business community. They raised a number of questions with me in terms of about what the district was doing. And ultimately for me, a good economic development strategy is based upon what our business community wants to see us deliver in partnership with others. So I welcome views and conversation at this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ben Green.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thanks for that update there. So I think we have to approach this fundamentally with a sense of scale. So the SK economy is 100 times bigger than what the council spends annually. I think we do risk being almost a gnat trying to fly in a straight line in a hurricane, frankly. So we have to come to this with a sense of realism. We have to understand our place in the overall setting of the economy. Having said that, is there a need for this? I think absolutely. So this comes with the heavy disclaimer. This is my own workings here I'm about to present, but looking at GDP per capita in SK, I think it's quite revealing. So I've used the latest 2020 figures. If you're looking at that, then actually what we've got per head at around about £22,000. I mean, in relative terms, internationally, that's behind Italy, that's behind Spain. And I even looked at the other districts in Lincolnshire. So we come out number 5 for GDP per capita out of the 7 there. So I think there's absolutely room for improvement. I also looked back at former economic development strategies as well. And I think something that really shouted out to me was the fact that looking at the one specifically, going way back when to 2005 to 8, there were SMART objectives in there year by year. So very definite concrete goals that we were seeking to achieve year by year by year. And I imagine committees like this would be able to scrutinise that and check up on progress against those. What do we want to target? I think absolutely we've got to be perhaps looking a little bit deeper at individual sectors. I think bringing my own sort of inclinations and my own little bias to the table, I still very much want to prioritise those high paid, high productivity manufacturing jobs. I'd like to see some export figures in there. I think we've really got to start driving that forward, particularly the trade deficit, I think at an all-time high nationally at the moment. So that's really what I would like to see. I would like to see definite, concrete, year in, year out, SMART objectives over what is, in effect, a 5-year plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I welcome this report. It's important for the South Kesteven district that we do have an economic development strategy and it works well. I agree a lot with what Councillor, your Vice Chairman, has said. I think we do need to prioritise things. It's good to have a strategy. Will it work? And what are the obstacles involved in it? A strategy is great, but can you actually implement it? And like Councillor Green said, the economy is a lot greater than South Kesteven, but we've got to do what we can to help it. I mean, assist it really. And that the way I see that, assist where we can, but not take over, so to speak. We haven't got to dominate. If the private sector are doing it, great, but where we can add value, and I know Councillor Cook or John probably agree with that, and that makes common sense. But we've also got to try and keep our existing businesses and help them where we can. So I think I would like to see a bit more detail. My question really, I suppose I've got a question on it really. What are the main obstacles for economic development in South Kesteven? Is it finance? Is it what will encourage people to come in? I don't know whether John can answer that. I'm quite pleased the way we're doing. I've got to help it. But what are the main obstacles for economic development in the district? Thank you.
John, if you'd like to come back.
Certainly, just off the bat, thought straight away, Councillor Wood. Main obstacles are a shortage of employment land or employment land in the right place. And that's obviously been looked at through the local plan that's being reviewed at the moment, and I'm taking part in that. We have low unemployment, very low unemployment, which is strange, but also quite difficult when you're talking to potential inward investors. But our A1 connectivity really helps address that. grow on space, but that's again linked to the need for more employment land. And I think generally, having worked with businesses across the district for the last 5 or so years, they are risk averse and have been even more so post the pandemic. And by that, pre-pandemic, a lot of conversations were taking place with businesses about expansion plans, including things like their pension pots. Post-pandemic, whether those pension pots have been used for other things or they are now more cautious, the desire for freehold and the desire to invest in business has decreased since the pandemic. But again, that's something that we're talking to businesses about. We have hopefully the Shared Prosperity Fund coming forward in the near future, and linking that, as we've said before, it's only £3.8 million, but linking that to schemes not dissimilar to those that we ran during the pandemic, particularly around business growth and business resilience, will be something that we'll be talking to the business community about and feeding that into this plan as we take it, into the strategies we take it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Vice Chair has pinched most of my excellent piece. Thank you very much indeed. One thing I would try to stress, though, is that something I've mentioned a number of finance meetings and others at the various times, that many of our targets that we set are rather wonderful words. We do lots of wonderful words and wonderful sentences and wonderful paragraphs, like making it a wonderful place to live, work and breathe and all these sorts of things. But we very often fail to match those with actual targets which are measurable and are measurable over a period of time, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year and 4 year. And I mentioned that before, and I'd like to endorse that again. In terms of the obstacles to growth in Lincolnshire, as I understand it from some businesses that I speak to, and it is a limited number, I must say, but that labour is still a substantial problem, a labour shortage of the right type of labour for what is required. This is more in Lincolnshire wider than just the district, and I'm wondering, what strategies can be produced in order to try to rectify that sort of a problem. It is a national problem, but it's something that's relevant to many businesses, I believe, in Lincolnshire, from what I'm being told. So I'd like to mention those two things and urge that when we do get some strategies in place, we put alongside the wise words actual targets that we can measure and measure the achievement of, because the measurement of our current strategy is not really undertaken with much real gusto. Thank you very much indeed.
John, did you want to come back? Thank you.
If I can come back on part of it, and then I'm happy for John. I think one of the challenges we've got to recognise as a council is, and actually Councillor Green referred to it quite eloquently, in terms of, we are a small stakeholder. We do not have extensive land. We need to provide that enabling factor to provide businesses to grow, because ultimately, some of the issues, particularly around, some of the points that were raised at the Grantham Business Club last week, in terms of business space, we don't have the land to build stuff ourselves in terms of supporting businesses, but it's about working together and working in the partnership. So some of it will be us working together with, for example, the county council, with some of our significant landowners. And quite often people will say to me about the land ownership of this district, and it is very traditional because it's still very much owned by a few families in most cases, and you can draw the estates all the way down the district, and it's about working with them to make sure we are allocating their land for either development in terms of commercial space, but also in terms of housing. We talk about labour shortages. One of the points I've noticed, and probably many others have, is when I left school and then went on to university, a number of my friends and my cohorts of my year group, they don't come back. They stay where they are. So in this area, we have a shortage of people, let's say from the ages of 18 to 35, before they then decide to move back here because they want to grow a family, because we've got good education and everything else. So we need to be making sure that we are providing good quality housing, for one, as well, that people want to come and live here. And it's everything else around the area that it supports. It isn't about recreating the wheel, because with the best will in the world, we will not be able to massively and significantly shift the economy as a district council. By working with the LEP and the LCC in terms of getting that funding, working with our stakeholders, we can see significant growth in the economy. And I very much agree, you know, we need very much key outputs in terms of what we can do as a district and how we can affect that change. I don't know if John wants to also add to that.
No, I think the only thing I'd say, absolutely agree with Councillor Knowles in terms of labour. I think, you know, I touched on that earlier. We touched on it in the strategy. I think going forward, what we've got to have, and I don't disagree with anything that anybody said about making this a measurable document and an achievable document. You know, I thank you for the comments about the words. But absolutely, those words don't mean anything if we can't measure them. So part of this consultation process, and when this document goes live on the 1st of April, there has to be an action plan attached, and there has to be measurable and achievable targets that I can bring to this committee going forward that actually says that's the vision and that's what we're doing against achieving it. So I really do recognise everybody's comments around making this something that I want to come back and report on successfully.
Councillor Knowles.
Thank you, Chair. Can I thank you for your comments and your obvious concern along those things? Just to sort of draw an example on that, I don't wish to drag up the past us all, but when we had a separate company looking at development, finding ways then to actually justify and to measure, not justify, measure what the effect of that company was, were very, very difficult to establish. And that's not a thing, but it will be within the district now, and we should be able to identify much more clearly, you know, where we're trying to be and what we're trying to get and how we get there. Thank you.
We have so many positives to offer in this area. We have good education, which should bring people in because they want to move here so the kids can get a good education. We've got fantastic history. We need to draw on that more. And we've got good connectivity with the A1, A52. You know, we really have got so much to offer as a district. I do worry and am concerned about the lack of connectivity, and I've said this before, with the south of the district to the north of the district. Unless you have a car, you can't get to Grantham for a job, for college, to shop. And that is a big concern because we are pushing all that economic straight into Cambridgeshire. We want it spent here. And we really need to try and look at that if we could, I think. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. I thoroughly agree. And I agree with a lot of the other comments that people have made. I'm pleased that we've got this first draft because it is plainly a first draft and it is genuinely for consultation. That's very welcome. We've got it before the pictures go in, and we've said that we're going to take it out for consultation wider, which is really good. I'm sure that when the final edition comes out, we will find space for photos of St Martin's Park, for example, which I can't find. I'm sure it's in here, but I couldn't find St Martin's Park mentioned in terms of a economic regeneration project. Hopefully, we'll also find a space near the beginning for the usual words from the council leader, whoever that may be at the time of publication. What I don't see in here are the differences, the SK differences, because a lot of, with the exception of the actual numbers, a lot of this could apply to any authority. What makes it more than a generic report about local authority challenges? Everybody wants access to art and access to culture, and everybody wants access to education. What are the SK differences? And I think that they could be stronger in this document. On page 39, we mention higher education, and we're saying come to South Kesteven because if you're in South Kesteven, you can drive to Leicester or Nottingham. That could be stronger, and it could be particularly stronger if we hadn't had the recent episode over the higher education establishment above the cinema. We also mentioning on page 39 under great quality of life, ample green spaces and community facilities. I've got to say that would be enhanced if we don't shut down the Deepens Leisure Centre forever and hand back the keys. Community facility. If you took this particular line about community facilities to the Deepings today, the people in Deepings would have questions about community facilities and SK's commitment to them. Moving on to the appendices, At the moment, we've got one appendix, which are achievements and projects. We've always been good at saying what we've achieved and what projects we've got going on and so on. What we're less good at is being honest about the challenges facing us, the health, leisure, education, industrial, cost of living crisis, all these. This document, if it's going to be an honest economic development strategy, should be saying we realise there are tough times ahead, and we recognise that these particular issues need addressing, rather than saying that great, we've won a load of money to give to the feudal landowners that have run this place for centuries, as Councillor Cook points out. Let's talk about the people who don't own land and are trying to struggle on without a business, and how they fit into the landscape of the four towns. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Cook.
I think just to, I mean, look, just a bit, I mean, the point I raised around landowners, it's a fact, you know, I was just raising it as a comment in terms of, you know, that's the makeup of our district, and that's just the partners we have to work with. As I'm sure Councillor Baxter is aware, obviously today's meeting is a scrutiny meeting. And if that is what the committee wants in this, then that is what you can all discuss and decide. It is at such an early stage we've brought it that we want this committee to scrutinise it, to look at it, to say what you want putting into it, so then we can work with that. And that's why it's here.
Thank you. Nicola McCoy-Brown.
Thank you. I think what I'm hearing then is that we need a section on the implications for the strategy as well, so we can easily include that within the next draft version as well.
Thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Stokes.
Yes, it's very interesting to read this. The implications are very good, but we have real problems in this area because we award vast areas of land to be built upon. The builders don't provide the housing for people to move into the area, and then the jobs are not there for them because the land hasn't been used to provide industry. It's very disappointing in some respects. There's a big development at Manthorpe that's been talked about for about 3 or 4 years, and they haven't even started doing it yet. And there's a lot of housing there, and there'll be a lot of people coming. I am concerned about the figures that they state are visitors to South Stephen. Somebody from Scarborough has decided where they come to here, although it does say Steam 2021, and I don't think there's that many people would come by Steam Railway. But 2.72 million, I don't know how you can quantify that. I really don't.
Thank you. Could somebody tell me what STEAM stands for, because I have forgotten?
Like you, it says Scarborough Tourism Economic Activity Monitor.
There you go then, so we've not come by STEAM. Thank you. On page 45, have you contacted, I'm sure Stamford has a business group, but it's been missed off. Lovely, thank you. Councillor Johnson.
The one thing that I think goes against our area is that a lot of people, especially in Stamford, buy houses and work in London. So they're commuters and they don't really spend the time going around the area that they live in. I think that's one of the problems that we have in this district. And Grantham has the same in some respects because you've got such good connectivity to London, but we need the connectivity to the outlying parts of the district, as you've just said, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Cook.
I think not to contradict Councillor Johnson, I think pre-pandemic, I think there is and we, you know, I live in Stamford as well, and Stamford's my hometown. Anything in the south of the district has always had a bit of that commuterville-esque essence. And if you only have to look at Elsie Park to know that a number of people there drive straight down the A15 in the morning and they drive straight down to Peterborough and on to Cambridge and everywhere else. And Stamford's not dissimilar for that. We are very lucky to have a railway station where you can then change at Peterborough to go to London. I think since the pandemic, we are seeing a shift in terms of travel to London. And it'd be interesting to get the statistics on that as well, actually, in terms of people commuting out of our towns, because actually I think with COVID, more people are doing the flexible working as we do as a council now, where I think they are going to London or other cities for a couple of days a week, but also working at home. And, I've worked out of Stamford a few days over the last couple of months. And actually, if you look at the coffee shops, you will actually start to see more people actually working out of these shops for most of the day. Indeed, there is a business centre in Stamford, which, I've been to in the past. They've also got picked up business in terms of people working out of there for the day. So they want that community space where they can go and work with other people and collaborate in a space outside of their own home. So I think, there is a massive shift. And, when it comes back to housing, in the south of the district, you can almost draw a line in the district map, anything south, we have significantly higher prices because of its commutability to other areas and towns, but also because people want to choose to live there for the different attributes and benefits of living in South Kesteven.
Thank you. Do I have any other comments? Are we happy with the recommendations? Also coming back with the implementations. So do I have a proposal? Councillor Johnson. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Knowles, thank you. All those in favour? Councillor Dilks, you with us? I am. Thank you. That's unanimous. Right, now we will go on to the finance update report, April to October 2022. And Richard, are you presenting this? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is the third finance update report that's been presented to this committee for this financial year. This covers 7 months, so up to the end of October. It includes projections up to the end of the financial year. There are a number of appendices that are included with the report, which I won't particularly go into any detail on, but members will note that the finance risk register continues to be updated and properly reflects the challenges facing this council and many councils. So you'll see a number of red risks on there. And also we've included the reserve positions because the reserves themselves are subject to recommendations that go into council this week. So it's probably relevant for members to be cited on the projections for reserves. So they're in there for the HRA and the general fund. So just quickly running through the report, it's no surprise because it's a recurring theme that the same pressures that we've reported throughout this year continue to be the pressures. And again, they're recognised not only in the risk register, but again in the report going to council, you'll see there's a number of amendments to reset basically the base budgets because the budgets themselves are not now sufficient to deal with the pressures coming through on the energy price increases for electricity and gas, for the fuel price increases, and also for the maintenance cost for the workshop with the in-house provision that the council has. So it's impacting on materials and it's impacting on the actual repairs themselves where we're having to outsource some of the work. So those as a kind of combined set of issues that are impacting not only on the general fund but on the housing revenue account are consistently referenced throughout the report. Some of the mitigations that are in place to offset some of those pressures are in respect of investment income, which has been recognised in the report. When the budgets were set in March by council, the base rate projection was 0.5%, and clearly at the current rate, the council is seeing higher returns than that. So you'll see we're seeing investment income exceeding budget on both the general fund and the housing revenue account. That's going some way to cushion the blow on the council's finances and offsetting some of those cost pressures. And that'll be a feature that rolls into the following year as well. Fuel itself has stabilised, but the energy market is still extremely unpredictable, and ESPO routinely give us updates on what their forecasts are going to be. And clearly, so from a budgeting point of view, not only this year, but also looking ahead to 23-24, is proven to be extremely challenging to accurately predict what those figures may be based on the consumables. And actually at tomorrow's scrutiny committee, there's a report which features one of the key energy uses of the council, which is street lighting, and there's a report going tomorrow for members to consider any options around how we can reduce energy costs in that particular part of the council estate. Just in terms of general fund capital, there's some narrative in the report at table 6, 4.2, which gives a rundown of some of the key variances that the general fund is experiencing this year, which is currently leading to a forecast variance of 3.8% against the capital programme. And also on the similar analysis for the HRA, which shows a more significant change on the forecast, largely due to, or not certainly not helped by, contractor differences in terms of access to the market, and also getting contractors to engage in the work activities due to their own pressures around labour and material supply chain issues. So they are a common feature, and we expect them to continue at least in the short term. On the HRA revenue budgets, pressures coming through on the similar areas that I've already mentioned, but also on repairs and maintenance. Again, probably not surprising. Material prices continue to be extremely unpredictable, and where the council has got landlord and compliance responsibilities, clearly it's faced with little choice but seeking to continue with those works programs. But clearly the budgets aren't at a level that can accommodate those pressures. But again, the investment income is largely helping to soften the blow on the HRA's finances to that effect. There are a number of volatile areas in the HRA capital programme that I've referenced, and as we go through the budget setting into 23-24, we'll see a lot of these rebased now, largely because the stock condition survey findings have now been received, and they will feature heavily in the budget formation of the capital programme beyond next year to comply with decent homes and ensure that there's energy efficiency works going into their housing stock. HRA reserves are appended at Appendix D for members' consideration. Just going back to utilities, you'll see at 9.4, that's the latest projections from ESPO on electricity and on gas, and you can see, particularly for electricity, 100% increase from October 22. Some of this slightly predates the government announcements on energy caps. Particularly, there was a reference in the mini budget, as it was called, in terms of some industry support for the business sector, which did include the local authorities at that point, but there's been no further information received since that time. So that's why this becomes a really unknown area. And certainly from April 23, there was nothing in the autumn statement, particularly referencing whether the cap that's been afforded to consumers will also be extended to the business sector as well. So at the moment, we're not anticipating that we'll be given any protection from price increases from next year. But again, we'll wait and see. Finally, on collection rates, they're in table 10.1. We are largely on track. Council tax has slightly fallen behind where we want it to be, primarily due to a period of national mourning where all recovery was suspended for the duration of that period, and therefore no reminders, summonses or court action was undertaken at that point, and therefore we're now recovering back to where we should be in the recovery cycle. So that's had a slight impact. And business rates continues to be extremely difficult to monitor against previous years, particularly because of the COVID support that was given during 2021, 22, where a lot of reliefs were given by government to various sectors, which means our profiling of business rate collections continues to be incredibly unpredictable. But from our kind of experience, we're more or less where we expect to be at this point in the year. So I'll pause there, Madam Chairman, and invite any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So the key figure that I highlighted on was the fact that our deficit on the previous report has gone down fairly substantially. So we've gone from, in that last report, a projected deficit, in-year deficit of 417,000 down to 258,000. So a decrease of 159,000. I'm keen to understand what is the single largest contributory factor to that, responsible for the decline there. And really to remark that if that is a reflection of the fact that we're dipping into reserves particularly, I mean, I think reserves are fine as a rainy day fund and you dip into that for that rainy day. I think we have a problem where, let's say we confront a monsoon and we're dipping into that over an extended period, we rapidly find ourselves into a very difficult situation. I think the preference would be that we'd want to be making efficiencies in-house to the greatest possible degree. Of course, we are also earning quite a lot of money off those reserves, so there's an additional cost to using them. And I would just comment on that medium risk for the fluctuations in business rates on page 75. Given that we are now in a recession, should that risk not be higher?
Richard, thank you.
So just in terms of the movement on the deficit, there's been no assumptions made about reserves dealing with that deficit. So there's been no projected movements to reduce that deficit down. So the change as each report progresses, bearing in mind, of course, as we go through the year, forecasting becomes more accurate because you're more then reliant on actuals than you are on predictions. So each month that passes, the projection gets more and more specific because you've got less months where you're forecasting and anticipating, and it's true to say that budget managers will always tell us they're going to spend the money they've got because that's the way budget managers tend to operate. They're not going to want to surrender any unnecessary budgets too soon because they've still got to deliver their services the remainder of the year. But as every month passes, we've got more actuals to rely on. Obviously, our investment income projections continue to change as the market fluctuates and the institutions put forward their interest rates. Then clearly that's going to change as well. And the final factor that's made a big difference to us is what we call the salary vacancy factor, which is where we assume a level of turnover and a level of vacancies within the establishment. And as the months progress forward, then there's more underspends being demonstrated through salary vacancies and salary turnovers that we can then bank and offset against the projected deficit. But I also make the point finally that, as referenced in the report, there was an inflation reserve that was specifically set up by the Governance and Audit Committee to deal with some of the problems that we're seeing in the budget, which was set at 500,000. So that was there for that particular use. So that is our ultimate cushion. It is only there for 1 year and it can only be used in one particular way. Obviously, our focus is to ensure we don't need it and we don't need to use it because that 500,000 can usefully go back into our general fund reserves and can be used for something perhaps more important to the council rather than just balancing the budget. But ultimately, we will need to reach a balanced position at the end of March 23. But that reserve is there should we need to. But you can see at the moment that's set at 500 and we're at 258. So hopefully between now and the end of the financial year, we can get that 258 down further. And therefore, the amount we need to use that reserve for becomes more and more reduced. Just on the business rate, yeah, clearly it's a volatile area. You've probably seen in the autumn statement, there's a revaluation that's occurred that's going to impact on the bills from April 23. So the business community will see different amounts they're due, but the government introduced something called transitional relief as well, which is where the bill from pre-reval and post-reval is tapered over a period of time to soften the blow on business community as to how much they'll end up paying. The stark reality is that the council is largely protected from volatility in the business community because of the empty rates relief scheme. So businesses are only protected from paying rates either for 3 months or 6 months, depending on their business hereditament. So actually the landlord or the owner of that property premises will pay the council irrespective of whether or not there's somebody occupying those premises. So which completely goes at odds with economic development strategy. So you could have an empty high street and the council would still be getting full business rates from it over that period of time because of the empty rates and the way the empty rates works. But we'll be seeking it from the owner of the property, not the tenant.
Yeah, just quickly come back on that, and thank you for that quite comprehensive answer. I do note, though, that looking at the full council reports pack, specifically page 21, there is very definitely that signalled intention to use reserves. So really just an observation rather than a question, I suppose. You know, there is a political choice that has been made there to go into those to see us through. And you know, I think we all want to reflect on that as opposed to making the in-year savings. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, can I just come back? Because it's a very clear observation. The budget report that's going to council starts to look ahead to 23-24, and as we sit here today, we haven't got a balanced position, provisional position yet for 23-24. That's partly in due because the autumn statement was only last week, and the provisional settlement for this council will not be given until the 19th of December. So we do not know sitting here today what our settlement is going to be from government. That's partly why we're saying legally we've got to present a balanced budget in March. Clearly, if the settlement isn't at the level this council it hopes to receive, and there are decisions made about the council tax level for 23-24, all those components will mean potentially we haven't got a balanced position. So in order to satisfy legislation, we'll have to use reserves on a short-term basis to present that balanced position. Clearly, the council has choices around that. It could choose to take different measures and different actions to mitigate or reduce completely any use of the reserves for 23-24. But the timing of the government's position on settlements and how the council has to set bills in time for the annual billing don't work in alignment. So it's all truncated in a matter of a few weeks, which makes it very difficult for council to seriously consider how it can reduce its costs within a very short period of time to ensure it can balance its budget without using reserves. And that's the point the report's trying to make.
Thank you very much, Richard. Do I have anybody else? Councillor Susan.
Thank you. It's just a query. On the clear and sustainable environment on page 11, it's about the new depot, and it says construction completion 2023-34. Is it really going to take 11 years, or is that just a typo error?
I don't think that's my report, Madam Chairman. I think that's in the performance report. So it'll get referred when that's presented.
Councillor Stokes.
Thank you. Yes, I've got a query on 9.3 fuel. It says that the budgeted price per litre of fuel was set at £1.10. And then it says the latest bulk purchase unit price paid was £148.75. Now, presumably that is more than a litre, or it's a typing error.
Yeah, that is it should be £1.48 per litre.
Thank you. Do I have anybody else? I'll take you after I've done committee members, Councillor Cleaver. Councillor Wood.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's just a question about the HRA capital listed on and the significant variances on page 59 and 60. I understand the reasons and accept the reasons put forward why we've underspent on those issues. You know, replacement doors and windows, kitchen and bathroom programs and that. So I accept that. I'm just looking forward to the next year. And I know now we've done the conditions survey, so hopefully we should be in a better position to estimate what works are required. And then probably my question is to Richard, although I feel a little bit embarrassed about asking you, Richard, but I know you've taken over the responsibility for, I suppose, Director of Housing as well, really. No. It's can we be assured really that next year's programme will be going to be based on the condition surveys, so it should be as accurate as we can get, and we will be able to achieve what we want to achieve, because obviously if we programme to do work, we want to actually do it to keep our housing stock up to standard really and improve it. So are we confident that next year's programme we can actually achieve that based on the data now we've now got? Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Yeah, just say from an officer point of view, I mean, that it's not the issues with the programme isn't about not being able to identify the need, and it's not about having now the knowledge of where that those works are needed. It is primarily about the market and working alongside Craig Spence, who is delivering the programme. I can say beyond doubt how difficult the procurement and the identification of contractors is proving to be. The number of contractors available in the market is very, very tight at the moment, and within those contractors, their supply chain issues and their labour market issues are really, really acute. So it's not a lack of will and momentum from a council perspective. It's just the market is not able to respond to the size of the and scope of the works that are needed, because there are many councils trying to do similar kind of work, and so some of the frameworks have only got one or two suppliers on them, and the prices they need to put forward to ensure they can deliver these programs of works are incredibly challenging. So I think it's partly a reflection of the world we're in at the moment, rather than a lack of momentum behind the programme.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions from the committee? No, Councillor Cleaver then.
Thank you, Chairman. I have made a submission to the committee on this item under section paragraph 6.4 of the Scrutiny and Procedure Rules as a non-member of the committee. And I believe that submission has been emailed to all the members of the committee, although I don't think they have a written version of it in front of them. Yeah, I think that was done during the course of the meeting. And therefore, I would like my submission to be considered by the committee and officers, please.
I mean, yeah, just from my perspective, the questions have been received. They're flying around everywhere. The responses have been given to each of those, so I'm perfectly happy with Councillor Cleaver is for his full questions and the full responses to be circulated to the committee. Hopefully some of the issues I've addressed in the presentation, but clearly I won't have answered every single one of those, but there's no kind of secrets on there. I'm happy if Councillor Cleaver is for the whole responses to be given to everybody.
Lovely. Happy with that then?
Well, I haven't seen the responses yet.
Oh,
Clearly, they only came in yesterday, so officers are very busy on other things, but they are ready, but I haven't yet circulated them, no, because I wasn't aware if Councillor Cleaver was going to present them today or not, but clearly that's not the case.
I'll respond to the answers when I see them. Thank you.
lovely. Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you, Chair. I think that exchange shows again how scrutiny is not working here. Councillor Cleaver has taken time to send 12 different questions relating to this report, which we could go through one by one. And they are good questions. One of them relates to the Arts Centre, the £69,000 project for renovations at Stamford Arts Centre is no longer proceeding. What was that project? I think that's a sorry, I've got a point of order or something, have we? Okay, thank you. So that in itself is a reasonable question. My question on the report itself is, I mean, apart from the irony, I think Councillor Cleaver's questions allude to it. When you look at the figures in here, you would have no idea of the massive conversation, discussion, the size of the debate that we're going to have about the Deepings Leisure Centre on Thursday. It doesn't seem to bear any relation to it, with the exception of acknowledging that gas and electricity prices are going through the roof. It also doesn't say in here, and for reasons I understand, about the cost impact of bringing Environment SK in-house or sending it out to market, whichever. But my biggest issue with this particular paper is the housing revenue account, where even though we know we've got massive problems or we have had massive problems with housing, we continue to have massive problems with housing, we still are not building houses at anything like the rate that we were promised over and over again. We have now, and I'm grateful for Mr. Wiles mentioning it, that we have the condition survey in now, but on every single budget line within the housing revenue account, every single budget variation, we are underspent. We should be spending, we should be investing in our housing stock much speedier than we are at the moment. And while the money sits there invested in Qatar and who knows elsewhere, we should be taking that money down and investing it in the houses which are enabling our residents to carry on living, to provide houses for those who are struggling with accommodation, whether they're homeless or nearly homeless. And I just think it's an absolute travesty that we're not making more progress more quickly on our council housing stock?
Thank you, but I do believe that Mr. Wiles did explain fully why we can't spend the money the way we want to at the minute because of lack of materials, lack of people to do the jobs. You know, we can't just magic these people up to put new windows in, to put new bathrooms in, to get the stock if we can't get it into the country. You know, we want it, it's there, we want to do it, but we can't get the people to do it. It's the lack of people. Richard, would you like to come back on that?
Yeah, and just a couple of other points in terms of the report on the council agenda for Thursday. That is some ways different to this report. This report is monitoring this year's budget framework. The report that's on Thursdays is looking ahead for 25 years worth of a decision that council is going to have a debate about. The two aren't directly connected because this is looking at the here and now and the budget pressures this council is under at this particular point, whereas the other one is looking ahead over the medium term and the long term for the council's financial position. I think I did explain, hopefully, the pressures that we've got with the contractors. I think that's wholly outside of our direct influence, and the council's got to be mindful of value for money. It can't just chase every single contractor, irrespective of the prices that are being put before the council. The council still has a duty of care to its tenants and its taxpayers to secure best value, and that doesn't mean writing blank checks out because there's one contractor who will do it for a significant piece of sum of money. In terms of the comments around the companies, I didn't quite see the correlation between the report and the companies. So I'm sorry if I've missed the point that was trying to be made on that. But obviously, Companies Committee, separate items are going to that meeting on the 1st of December. So perhaps that question is better placed at that meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Stokes, did you want to come in?
Yes, thank you. Reference has been made to the questions that Councillor Cleaver sent. Unfortunately, I only received a copy this morning, so I wasn't able to answer any of them prior to that. So I just wanted to ensure he will get a full response and the committee will get the responses to the questions. It's just a shame I hadn't received them until this morning, until I was handed them by the democracy officer.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions from anybody? Councillor Dill.
Yeah, can we just establish, we are a scrutiny committee. As far as I understood that Councillor Cleaver had submitted those questions some days ago. What's going to happen to them? Are we not going to scrutinise them, or are we just going to sort of bung them to, with respect, the cabinet member for finance who's just going to sort of provide answers? I welcome those answers. We should have had them today, I've got to say, and we should be discussing them. So even if we're not going to discuss them today, is that something we'll be doing next time or whenever? I'm asking what's going to happen to them. It is a reasonable thing that a councillor can submit those sorts of questions. They're good questions, in my view. But we're a scrutiny committee. We're not, I'll shut up.
I only got the questions on Sunday, so I wouldn't expect any officers, if they received them on a Sunday, to be working on a Sunday to provide the answers. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, obviously, it's a scrutiny committee and questions and debate should be held here. In respect of these questions, I'm disappointed. I've not received a copy at all, so I don't know what's on this list of questions from Councillor Cleaver. So it's disappointing if that's the expectation. And obviously, our officers also have extensive diaries as well as all of us. But we're here to debate and discuss. I would just like to make a point in terms of the housing, if you may, Madam Chairman, through you. Obviously, in terms of our housing stock, obviously, we continue to invest in our housing stock. Indeed, the housing stock survey that we've nearly completed, it's one of the largest pieces of works that we have done in a long time to really understand the breadth of our housing across the district in terms of the stock condition, in terms of what needs to be replaced, what needs to be invested in, and how we can support our residents. Obviously, there is a business case then that will though go behind that will then allocate the funding that needs to go into those various areas. You're absolutely correct, as is our Chief Finance Officer, in terms of the investment plans, in whether it's roofs or bathrooms or kitchens and everything else. And the housing stock survey will give us that evidence and that intelligence as to where we need to best invest. Yes, I'd agree. We have continued to build council homes over this term, not at the level that we'd have hoped. And I think we all acknowledge and recognise the challenges of development. But we have continued to do so. But for me, we really need to, now we've got the housing stock survey, is make sure all our existing housing is up to scratch and up to where it needs to be before we start looking at wild scale development plans across the rest of the district, because ultimately we need to look after our tenants immediately in terms of their current conditions, as well as continuing to develop on sites that we do own. And we are limited in terms of development, because as I've said before, we don't have masses of sites. We need to look at what we've got and then work in partnership with others and other housing associations that continue to build across our district.
Thank you. Councillor Ben Green.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I mean, I think personally, it is a disappointment we've not had a public airing and address of the questions that Councillor Cleaver has put before us today. But then I'm also incredibly sympathetic with the heavy workload of our officers as well. So I was just wondering if it's possible to arrive at some kind of a compromise whereby almost a deadline of sorts could be given unofficially for questions in advance. And I'm sure we'd be more than happy to adhere to that, to give the maximum possible chance for questions to be properly considered before a committee meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Cleaver.
Thank you. With your indulgence, Madam Chairman, can I just remind the committee what the Constitution says on this matter? Section 6.5 of the Overview and Scrutiny Rules of Procedure. And they state, any councillor will have the right to make written submissions to any meeting of an Overview and Scrutiny Committee on any agenda item no later than 24 hours before the start of the meeting. Such submissions will be tabled at the meeting or circulated beforehand. A record of any submissions made and any responses to them will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. The idea behind this being that obviously you can't put questions in until you've seen the agenda. So there is a tight deadline between receiving the agenda, having time to read it, putting the questions in, and obviously I put them in on Sunday evening, having read the agenda items during the weekend, and obviously therefore I stuck to the 24-hour deadline.
No, I thank Councillor Cleaver for the clarification there, and it feels very much that you adhered to that procedure, did everything by the book. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, there's nothing to stop Councillor Cleaver from asking them now and actually. I mean, I'm sorry, Councillor, I haven't got a copy of them. So if you're asking me as leader of the council to give you answers, I need to I can either hear them from you verbally and I will try and get a response or not, but that's what we're here for. So if you want to ask them, you've got your opportunity through, I'm sure, through the chair.
Could I suggest then the easiest way to proceed is for Mr. Wiles to read out my questions and the answers that I know he's actually drafted and written to them? Would that be appropriate?
Appropriate if the councillor himself asks the questions,
fine.
I'm happy to respond to them.
Okay, fine.
We'll do it.
Thank you. I'm happy with that. Very happy with that. Okay, would you like me to answer? Thank you, Chairman. The question 1. The item forecasts a net budget deficit for 22-23 of £258,000 and invites the committee to recommend any specific actions or interventions that should be considered in order to reduce the general fund forecast deficit. However, the recommendations set out in agenda item 6 of the papers for the full council meeting on the 24th of November seek council approval for increases in the 22-23 budget far in excess of £258,000. Please could you explain why there is such a difference between the recommendation to this meeting and the one being made to the full council 2 days later?
So the two particular different items, because council has the authority to change the budget framework and make changes to the one that's been set by itself earlier in the financial year, which was March 22. So the recommendations going before council are very specific to address the budget pressures that are referred to in this report. The role of this committee is a scrutiny committee, so it's inappropriate for officers and the cabinet member to predetermine the interventions this committee may want to see, which could vary from the proposals that are put before council. As they're two different constitutional entities, they've got different roles, so it's not appropriate for both reports to correlate necessarily with each other because they're serving different purposes.
Thank you. Councillor Cleaver.
So I must admit to saying I still don't understand the answer, but I don't think I'm going to resolve it here. I think that's that's an explanation that needs to be taken offline and not to take extra time from the committee. My second question is table 2 on page 54 shows an increase of £159,000 in transfers from reserves between the current budget and the latest forecast spend. What does this 159,000 relate to?
Okay, so the answer is building control account, there's a movement of £3,000. The new burdens grant funding, there's a movement of £55,000. The in-use individual election registration account, £56,000. Corporate restructure exit cost, £94,000. St Martin's Park reduction in business rate costs on the site, £96,000. Grantham special expense area, cemetery works, £12,000. Stamford special expense area, outdoor gym equipment, officer delegation, £7,000. The waste reserve use of £27,000 and member training, £7,000, total £159,000.
Thank you. My question 3. Table 2 shows a new total transfer from reserves of 2.468 million. But Appendix B on page 69 shows a forecast transfer from revenue reserves of 9 million for the year. Please, could you explain the difference?
So table 2, Madam Chairman, is only for general fund revenue, whereas Appendix B is the full forecast on the reserves, and therefore that includes revenue and capital. So the figures will be different.
Thank you. Question 3. We just done, sorry. Question 4. In section 4.2, table 6, it states that a £69,000 project for renovations at Stamford Arts Centre is no longer proceeding. What was that project?
So Cabinet approved £100,000 budget for modernisation of the Stamford Arts Centre foyer to incorporate a customer service hub. Those works have been completed at significantly less cost than the original 100,000 that was identified at that point.
Thank you. Question 5, in section 4.2, table 6, it also states that the terms and conditions attached to the Empingham Road section 106 grants are unlikely to be met before the end of March this year, the end of this financial year. Why is this considered unlikely, and what is preventing the conditions being met?
So Cabinet previously agreed, Madam Chairman, for the transfer of Empingham Road and Uffington Road to Stamford Town Council from April 23. In respect of Empingham Road, there are some legal arrangements in place with 106 monies that are being allocated to particular beneficiaries of that 106 sum who use the Empingham Road site. One of those is a club that has also got separate discussions regarding a replacement of their pavilion, which is tied up with other external grant funding that they're trying to allocate to themselves to enable that new build to go ahead, which then results in a different lease arrangement being put in place between the council and the club involved. With all that going on, it's unlikely that the 106 monies will be spent before the transfer takes place in April 23. If that is the scenario, then we would ask the town council to take over that element of the 106 allocation at that point.
Thank you. I just wanted to be sure that there wasn't because there was any shortage of matching funding that was the cause for any delay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Sorry. My question 6, in Appendix A in the table headed Growth and Culture, a forecast variance is shown for the net budget. What are the forecast variances for income and the forecast variances for expenditure for each of the arts venues?
Given the time available to me, that is not an easy answer to provide. So I will refer to the Assistant Director and the Director for Leisure to provide a separate answer, if that's okay, because there are multiple cost centres involved in that question.
Thank you for that. Question 7, in Appendix B, what do the forecast movements in the local priorities reserve relate to? And I'm specifically interested in the future years ones there. There's, I think, something in for 24, 25.
The priority reserve, Madam Chairman, is the primary source of funding the council has available to it to fund one-off initiatives and one-off projects. The key movements that are referred to are the receipt of new homes bonus for this year of 924,000, funding to support the local plan review of 161,000, revenue funding to support the revenue budgets of 776,000, further funding to support St Martin's Park development of 500,000, and use of that reserve to fund capital financing in the absence of capital receipts of just over 2 million. Looking forward, there's further reliance on that reserve to fund capital projects due to the fact that there is an insufficient level of capital receipts at this current time, hence why there's been significant time and energy put behind an asset disposal programme to generate and accelerate capital receipts. And as Councillor Green alluded to in the report, there is clear reference made to the fact that the council will be unable to fund its capital programme without borrowing if it can't rely on the local priority reserve and it can't rely on capital receipts. Further pressures on the local priority reserve will be the complete removal of new homes bonus as an initiative by government. There is no further announcements on that particular item, so we're only expecting one more tranche of new homes bonus next year, and then that'll stop. That'll put pressure on that reserve because that's the only way that reserve is currently being replenished.
So could you be more specific about the 1.48 million for 24-25?
Not at this moment in time. That'll be part of the refresh as part of the budget setting, because we're clearly at the moment the focus is on 23-24, not beyond that. But I can provide an answer as to how we arrived at that figure, but it will be largely historical at this time.
Okay, question 8. I think you've touched on this, so apologies if this is repetitive. In Appendix B, we've created a £500,000 inflation reserve as at 31/3/22, from which we're forecasting that no monies will move in or out for the next 4 years. So which obviously looks strange on the paper that we put this £500,000, we're never actually going to use it. That's really what provoked my question.
Yeah, so the inflation reserve was set up by the Governance and Audit Committee this year as a one-off to respond to, at that point, the predictions of the energy price pressures that were coming through. So it is only a 1 year only reserve. Now, clearly, if there is a need to continue something similar to that, then council will need to make that decision when it sets its budget. But at this point in time, it was there to deal with one-offs within 22-23 and not beyond that.
Thank you. Question 9. In Appendix B, the usable capital receipts reserves show an increase of 2.322 million in 23-24 and 6.181 million in 24-25. What do these figures relate to? How much of these figures relates to the sale of St Martin's Park? And do they include the total expected capital receipts from St Martin's Park?
Okay, so the usable capital receipts reserve, this comes back to the comments I made earlier about the acceleration of receipts. So obviously we're in a public meeting, so I'm not going to go into specifics because these are commercially sensitive at this point in time, but there are entries in the 23-24 relating to the sale of 2 particular assets, which we expect to conclude during the next financial year. There are receipts coming through on the projected sale profile for 3 of the developers at St Martin's Park. There are 10% on exchange predictions made, so they are featuring within 23-24 and 24-25. The full receipts coming from that development are predicated largely on the build out timescales that the developers will be working to. So at this point in time, I'd rather not go into specifics on that.
Okay. Question 10. How will the figures shown in Appendix B be affected by any decision made at full council to cancel the planned rebuilding of the Deepings Leisure Centre?
There'll be no effect, Madam Chairman, because Appendix B is reserves and the Deepings Leisure Centre refurbishment programme was wholly funded by borrowing. So that will be external costs, not seen within the reserves.
Yeah. I thought that was the case, but I just wanted to hear it to be sure. Thank you. Question 11. I note that whereas capital projections have been published up to 25-26, there are no revenue budget projections provided for the same time period. I believe this makes it very difficult for members of the council to make a fully informed decision on Deepings Leisure Centre at the meeting on the 24th of Thursday, the 24th of November.
The council is only obliged to table and approve a 3-year mean-term financial plan. So each time council meets in March to set its council tax, it's setting for the year ahead and indicatives for the 2 years thereafter. The reason we show a slightly longer timeline for reserves is to give members full visibility of how the reserve balances will change over the period of time based on some of the movements we've talked about in terms of receipts and things like new homes bonus, so we can give members full sight of how the reserve levels are changing over that period of time. But there's only a legal requirement to present and accept a 3-year medium-term plan.
Finally, apologies for taking up so much time. Question 12, where does the liability to repay £1.3 million to the Greater Lincolnshire LEP for monies unspent in relation to the University Technology Information Centre project appear in Appendix B?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So that's specifically referenced in the budget report that's going to council on Thursday. There's a particular element of the report referencing that. It also says that that matter will come before council in January 23. So at this point in time, no assumptions have been made regarding any repayment of that sum. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard, for responding to all.
Can I add my thanks too? Thank you,
Thank
Chairman.
you.
Thank you.
Just also wanted to echo my thanks to Officer Wiles. I think we are here to scrutinise, and I think we saw a great expression of that today. Thank you.
Councillor Paul.
Thank you. And thank you, Richard, for those questions. And you seem to have the answers to most things, actually. Thank you. It's just a notice on the recommendation, item 2. It recommends any specific actions or interventions that should be considered in order to reduce the general fund forecast deficit. I presume that's referring to on page 55, the explanation, electricity costs, fuel, and things like that. I'm not sure what we can do, actually. Is there any recommendations the officers are putting forward? I mean, one of the big costs is electricity and fuel costs. There are other things. I'm not quite sure what we can do. Is there any suggestions of what we can do? Thank you.
I mean, clearly in the report, we've set out how, in the event of a deficit still being evidenced on the general fund revenue position, then the reserve will have to come into play. But I've also referenced that there are reports going to other committees which talk about some of these pressured areas, such as street lighting, and clearly there are options around any of the council's estate as to how it may want to address some of the concerns through either an acceleration in energy efficiency replacement programs, for example, or changing the service offer within particular parts of the council's estate. I'm not here to, it's not for me to tell you what you recommend, but clearly there are choices in anything. We're assuming a business as usual service model running through the council, and therefore on that trajectory, these will be the pressures that the council will face. So clearly there are a number of interventions and steps that can be taken and choices that can be made that will mitigate or offset or reduce those projections. But clearly that's for members to consider those.
Thank you,
Madam
Richard.
Chairman, we obviously got, I know Lincoln County Council have got a responsibility for a lot of street lights, but SKDC have as well. And I know a lot of them are old fashioned street lights, and I'm pretty sure we've got a programme for doing LED lights on. Could we increase that then? I would suggest that's quite a, I know there's a cost in doing it, but there is a saving in electricity use, isn't there? So we should be trying to increase that rollout of those lights.
I believe that's coming up at another meeting tomorrow. So we'll let them discuss that, because they'll have all the facts and figures of how many lights we do have, how many need changing, and the costs and forecasts for that. Do I have any other questions, or is everybody happy with the recommendations? Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. Could I just clarify? Mr. Wiles said that the Deepings Leisure Centre refurbishment was going to be funded entirely from borrowing. Can you? Is that correct, or was there not any element of I can't remember, capital funding from our own reserves that was going to be used towards it?
No, the reports that have gone before council on that particular matter have wholly demonstrated that it would be through borrowing. It may be short-term internal borrowing, but ultimately it would be a public loan board loan that would be required because of the level of the investment that would be needed to do that.
Thank you. Councillor.
Just on that, a clarification, thank you for that. At one stage, it was the Deepings Leisure Centre. In fact, I think when we were going back to the new build that we were talking about, was partly going to be funded, am I right, from the receipts from St Martin's Park, partly that part of the excess that we hoped for from St Martin's Park would be funding the Deepings Leisure Centre improvements. Am I wrong?
That's never been a formal decision to link any receipts from one sale to fund directly another particular project. No.
Thank you. But it wasn't ratified then. Right. Are we happy with recommendations that we have before us, 1 and 2? And if we are, do I have a proposer? Councillor Ian Stokes, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Susan Sandal, all those in favour? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Right, the corporate plan key performance indicators 2022-23 mid-year report. Who's going to be? Thank you, Callum, if you could.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Obviously, I'm presenting the mid-year key performance indicators to the committee today, which covers the period to the end of September 2022. As per the report of the 15 actions that this committee oversees, 11 are green, 3 are amber, and 1 is under review. So focusing on some of the details, the Heritage Action Zone is amber, but members to note that the progress of the Grade 2 listed Westgate Hall, which once completed will be a high-end bar and restaurant. And this project will shortly be going out to tender. And it is a really good and positive report. And I know Heritage England are also very encouraged by the plans that are coming forwards for that. A town team is being established, and this week a Grantham engagement manager has commenced their role. KPI 3 is around historic and regeneration funding, and the committee is to note that the draft economic strategy of 23 to 28 is obviously a agenda item which we've discussed, and obviously feedback on this crucial document are welcomed. KPI 4 is green, and it's worth noting that the Hello SK app is doing very well with over 170 businesses engaged. Obviously, there's always more work to do on that, but I am pleased with the growth that it is having. KPI 9 is delivery of a new depot, and obviously Councillor Reid gave an update to the last Environment OSC. The civils works clear Turnpike Close have begun and due to finish by Christmas. The replacement depot project has been paused temporarily whilst some other works are undertaken around fleet procurement and reviewing the routes that we're also undertaking as a wider council as well. Completed projects for noting are the Constitution Review, the Governance Review, the People Strategy, ICT Strategy and the Asset Management Strategy. The Customer Experience Strategy is under review due to the channel shift post-pandemic, but with the Customer Services function moving temporarily to the Guildhall from next week. Obviously, it is a positive report in terms of where we are. Obviously, I am aware that the last KPI is around investing in high quality leisure across the district. This item is green in terms of the 3 existing leisure centres that are currently operating. So this is to do with the operating leisure centres. Obviously, I'm aware of the report going to council on Thursday, where there will be a full frank debate, I'm sure, by all members. But I would like to put on record my thanks to the staff at both South Kesteven and also Leisure SK, particularly around the provision of leisure and the services that they are providing. Appreciating we will have a full debate on Thursday. And I would like to thank the officers also for putting together this report amongst the cabinet members as well that support and work with our officers on delivering many of the schemes and programmes of work that you'll see in this report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dilk, do you have a question?
Yes, I have. But before I ask it, I just wonder if I could seek clarification on the report. Thank you. It says obviously on page 1 that the relevant corporate policy priorities are, from the which I recognise from the corporate report, the corporate plan, growth in our economy, housing that meets the needs of all residents, healthy and strong communities, clean and sustainable environment, and high-performing council. And then, of course, we go through the report, and we've got a page on most of the key performance indicators, of which they are under those headings, broad headings of the priorities. What isn't listed is housing, and I say this in view of the questions and your answer, Councillor Cook, on the housing performance and the number of houses that we have built, and I know that we, for whatever reason, we're not building at the rate that we wanted to. But there is nothing about housing that meets the needs of all our residents, or indeed, I think I'm right in saying nothing on health and strong communities. I just wonder if you could clarify, are there no KPIs on those areas?
So thank you, Madam Chairman. Obviously, those KPIs and that reports go to the relevant committee, of which we have different committees to look at those.
Thank you for that. Thank you. It just perhaps would be helpful to have had that in the report, but thank you. On the, my actual question does relate to, you won't be surprised to know the last item or the last KPI that Councillor Cook mentioned, and it is action. It's in the top 5 priorities, building healthy and strong communities, and it's page 19 on the report. And it says that the action is investing in sustainable, high quality leisure facilities across the district. And what does success look like? And we're told, it says halfway down the table, success looks like an agreement of a programme of new build and refurbished leisure centres meeting the needs of the district. And then we have below, it says the measure, the target, when it was achieved, and all. It's ongoing, it says. I noticed what you said, though, that Deepings has already been airbrushed out of this report. Well, let me just finish and then I'll come back.
I know that's used often. I didn't state it had already been airbrushed out. I said this is to do with the 3 operational. Sorry, this is to do with the 3 operational leisure centres at the present time.
Yeah, that's the same thing. I appreciate that Deepings is not operational. That's the problem. But it is about, as I say, what a success looks like. It looks like agreement of a programme of new build and refurbished leisure centres meeting the needs of the district. The Deepings is part of this district. And then, of course, I noticed that the full condition surveys have been carried out at Bourne Leisure Centre, Grantham and Stamford. I welcome that. Clearly, there's work needed in them, and I think we all can see that. But we need, this report really should have a bit more about what's happening with those. It sort of says it's ongoing, or we're going to place the orders for category D work, and then we're looking at category C items, whatever they are. But I've got to say, to come to this committee or any committee and say that we just take Deepings out of the equation, and then so that we can get a green sheet in the current status of our leisure key performance indicate. Current status, if it was red, that would be failing. Amber, it would be that we're off target. But no, we're on or above target. We're all green. There's only greens on this page. Who are we trying to kid? Nobody's going to be fooled, I've got to say, just by taking Deepings out of it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Obviously, in terms of what does success look like, in terms of what does the corporate plan state, obviously the corporate plan was agreed in 2020. That was obviously pre-pandemic, pre the financial climate that we currently find ourselves in. In terms of other areas, obviously we have, as many of you know, Cabinet, we invested in the Bourne gym equipment. This report was and runs up till the end of September 2022 before the report to council was released or even public or even, being worked.
But Madam Chairman, the action and the key performance indicator is how we're doing in investing in sustainable, high quality leisure facilities across the district. It doesn't say what we're doing in part of the district. And what I'm saying is there's nothing in here about the Deepings. And there is with respect, there's no plan for the Deepings. That's the problem.
Madam Chairman, just for clarity, this report runs until the end of September 2022. So at that present time, the council has made no decision yet, but there is a discussion on Thursday in terms of the future of Deepings Leisure Centre at the end of September 2022. This is an accurate report.
Thank you.
Thanks, Madam. I wonder if we can go back on a slightly different tack, if I may. Just on the report, and thank you for the report, but I sort of looked at it and I thought, who's written the report and where's it from and who's approved it and signed it off and everything. And of course, I noticed, as everyone will have noticed, that we've changed the way that we present reports now, and that we no longer have the table at the front of the report that we have had for as many years as I can remember that says who wrote the report, and we've got who wrote this report. but then it would normally say who reviewed the report with a date and who has approved the report with a date, and then who has signed it off with a date. All those things are not there anymore. And it's not just in this report, of course, it's in all reports. I may have missed it, but when was that policy changed and who changed it?
Obviously, Madam Chairman, I'm happy for our monitoring officer to answer that. And I know it was a piece of work undertaken by our Democratic Services team.
Thank you, if you'd like to.
Yes, certainly. So I can't give you the exact date, but it's for several months, Councillor Dilks, that that's been the case. Didn't seem like there was any value in having those who reviewed every single line of it, as long as you were able to understand who the report was from. So that's detailed in the report, and that's in this case from Councillor Cook. And it also says who the author is if you would like to ask any questions of that author and their contact detail. So for me, that's been the case, well, for at least the last 3 months, but I would suggest longer than that. I can check the details, but nobody's raised it before today. I think it's hard to understand what the value is of understanding our entire checklist of who signed off those reports, because I don't think.
Madam Chairman, thank you, Alan, for the explanation, and I appreciate it. I've noticed in other reports and I have sort of picked it up, and I'm sure others have either as well, but I didn't realise that it was now the policy that all reports would not have those things in it. I'm not sure, as I say, who's done that. I would have thought it would have been a matter for the Constitution Committee, but there we are. There have been questions in the past from councillors, from elected members, about who signed the report off and on what date. And when the dates have been there, it has raised issues. But it's quite convenient just to it seems to be quite convenient just to get rid of those things. I mean, if it does seem silly that if we've got a question, we're going to have to now put a question into who signed it off, who reviewed it. What's wrong with in openness and transparency in having that information there? There is a value from my perspective of having that information. Thank you.
Who wishes to answer that one for me?
So as I was saying, this has been taken out for a number of months now. The people who are responsible for the reports that you see in front of you are the ones that are detailed on the report. Those people who sign those off as quality control, or to give, so as Richard and I do, we put our names in them anyway. So that table was of little or no value as far as we could see. Now that was taken out for that reason. I've no intention of kind of reviewing that. I don't think it was a significant, until today, I didn't realize it was a significant issue. But I have no, I have no qualms about that. The person responsible, so in this report, it's Councillor Cook, and we also know who the author is if you need to, if you need to make those checks. So I don't see that it matters why that needs to be transparent to members of the public or people even in this committee as to everyone who's read it to make sure it's okay.
Madam Chairman, if I can just finish through you. Mr. Watts, as our Assistant Director for Governance and Legal Services, updated this template. It was updated. It's been used with best practice. Quite often we always get accused of cabinet managing scrutiny. Quite often, sometimes actually, it shouldn't be for cabinet members to be signing off reports to go to scrutiny, because scrutiny will do their own pieces of work, as well officers also wish to present pieces of work to scrutiny committees as well.
Thank you,
But it is a report of the leader, this particular one. It says that, no problem.
In terms of openness and transparency, it says that on the report. It says it's from myself. It also says the report author as well.
Thank you. Councillor Stokes?
Yes, it's a very strange point that's been raised, but somebody stated, and I don't know who it was, that the report author would always be here to answer questions. Well, Robert Warburton, who wrote this report, I can't see in the room.
Yes, Debbie.
Through you, Madam Chairman. Robert Warburton's one of the officers that sits in my area. It's always the intention that when these KPIs come forward, that there's actually directors here that are responsible for those areas that can answer the relevant questions. So the exercise that's done around key performance is Rob will go out to all of the service areas to get the information, which then gets fed into the reports that are before you. So there's always relevant people here that can respond.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter?
Yeah, on this point, I understand that it's been perhaps 3 months. I think probably it was July that the format changed. It was the same time that the format changed and we put on the agenda about the announcements from leaders and cabinet members, which has never meant anything anyway. It's been a difficult 3 months. We've had the death of Her Majesty the Queen, and so the committees have been all over the place. But this has never been, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think the changes to the format will refer to anybody, let alone the Constitution Committee. I've been in the past, I've looked at those dates on the reports, and I've thought, right, she wrote it, he signed it off on that date, cabinet member signed it off on that date. And from working those figures, you can work out who knew what and when, and that's often quite instructive in terms of who's trying to hide what and when. Taking it off the report is definitely reducing the amount of scrutiny the council gets. It's definitely taking information out of the public domain. And also it's putting officers like Robert Warburton under more pressure, because it's quite right that the senior officers should come here and take the criticism and pass it back. We shouldn't be putting lower level officers in the front line. I think it's a retrograde step, and I would like to take it, and I will be speaking to the chair of the Constitution Committee about it, because it's yet another example of scrutiny being undermined.
As far as I'm concerned, if you haven't noticed and you haven't made any comments about it for the last 4 months, there can't have been that big an issue with it. Otherwise, you'd have brought it up there and then at the first committee where you had these new altered agenda packs. If you were really that bothered about it, you would have brought it up at the first instance, not 4 months later.
Well, I disagree with you, Chair, because it matters when it matters. Like it's only when there's a problem with something that you realise the implications. And the problem is that we can't see when these reports were written, we can't see who's cobbled them together, and it's information that should be in the public domain, which is not in the public domain.
Councillor Stokes, Adam Stokes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think, again, Councillor Baxter is showing a lack of respect to officers. Cobbled together reports, that is a lack of respect. These are professional officers, and I do hope you'll reflect and potentially withdraw that comment.
I'm happy to withdraw the comment, cobbled together.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Dilks and Baxter won't be too happy with my comments. I mean, I can't see actually a problem with it, really. We've got the name of the, when we have a report, that we've got the name of the person who's written the report. We've got the report author, the person presenting it. We've actually got more details than what we used to have, actually, with implementations, the legal comments, background to report, key considerations. So I don't actually see a problem with it. And I accept what you say, Madam Chairman, that we've changed it a while ago. I think it's probably an improvement. I don't see a problem with it at all. If there was a problem with it, I don't see why it wasn't raised previously. So I have no problems with it at all. Yes, I would like the report author to be here, ideally, but the format of it makes no difference to me. I sort of welcome it and think it's probably an improvement. So I have no problems with it at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Sorry, a promotion, another promotion.
Thank you for the promotion, Chair. So just in this particular instance, in all other aspects, as Councillor Stokes and Councillor Wood are quite right, we want the report author here because they're the best person to answer the questions you have. But for this particular report, it's not around their area of expertise. They bring together, as Debbie was explaining, the report from everywhere else, from all those directors and service managers within the team. And you'll see in this room today are the senior officers who were responsible for all the things that are in this report. So it's almost the exception that proves the rule, because the author themselves is really they're more pulling this one together rather than writing it from knowing the detail because it's their working life. They pull together all the details from all of us, and therefore we come here to represent and to be the best people to answer the questions that we have on the detail in the report.
Thank you. Councillor Ben Green.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll just note from Councillor Baxter, there's also an insinuation made that cabinet members and officers were hiding material at certain points in time. Without evidence, would you like to withdraw that comment? Thank you.
No, Chair, I'd like to clarify that there was information in these reports regarding who signed the report off and when, and that no information is no longer in. So therefore, it's being hidden.
Ben.
That is ascribing a motive without evidence. So I'd once again ask you to withdraw that unless you can provide that to this committee here and now.
Councillor Baxter.
I would say that the motive is the same motive that prevents good scrutiny of this council the whole way along. The cabinet do not want to be held to account for their actions, and that's why they hide from scrutiny at every turn. And that's why this opportunity to reduce the amount of information in the public domain has been perpetrated upon us.
I don't think so, and I'm not liking the tone that this is taking. Now, as I have said, and Councillor Woods agrees with me, if you were that bothered, why did you not do it at the first report? And you haven't. So therefore, for me, personally, I can't see that it makes a difference to you. It's just been brought up and it's something that you've thought of today. If you were really that bothered, like you...
Madam Chairman,
I'm speaking, thank you.
Yeah, well, I've got a point of order.
Speaking, thank you. And I will get my point across. I give you the courtesy to speak whenever you wish, at any point. Now, please let me finish. You have not brought this up before. We have had numerous agendas. We have numerous reports. You attend most committees and you have not brought it up at any other committee. So therefore, in my opinion, you cannot be that bothered. Councillor Dilks.
Thank you. Now you're making insinuations. Yeah, you also said that, you know, I've only just thought of it. I haven't only just thought of it. I had thought of it previously. I have not, as you said, I've not brought it up. But it came up today. I looked and I thought, raise that, and I have raised it. I didn't. You know, I was clearly opening a bit of a can of worms. But it is, in my opinion, we're going to disagree. But I think it is. It's another step in closing down openness and transparency in this council. Who made the decision? Did the leader, did the cabinet know this decision was being made? I don't know who's actually made it.
Councillor Cook, and then I will end this and we will go to the vote if they've got no other questions other than that. Thank you.
I was going to just to say, Madam Chairman, look, the officer involved that has obviously reviewed the report template and has updated it in line with best practice is not present in this room. And I think it's incredibly unfair for us to be criticising an individual for the work that they've undertaken without them here. If any member wishes to discuss why the report template is as it is, I'm sure the officer would be more than happy to address that. I would also like to just acknowledge that in terms of cabinet members hiding from scrutiny, you know, we always hear this. I am here. I am at scrutiny. I'm here to be asked questions. We have a report in front of us that we haven't even really discussed, but we've talked about who signed it off on what date and when. This report runs until the end of September. This information is factual information, and we have not had a discussion about this yet. And it's disappointing that certain members like to just disrupt meetings for the sake of it and not get into the actual work that we need to undertake. The scrutiny review, let me finish, please. The scrutiny review was not just about members of the administration. Opposition members, irrespective of which party or allegiance, also have a role to do with scrutiny, as do administration members as well. And I can assure you, there is no whip in these meetings. I want and welcome fresh and robust discussion, debate, and progress in terms of recommendations. That is what we are here for. And that is why we are all here investing our time. I didn't get elected to not represent my area of Keswick, as I'm sure the rest of you didn't, in terms of making it to the best place for our residents and businesses to succeed.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions regarding the corporate key plan performances other than the report author and the presenter? Thank you. Councillor Baxter. Oh, Councillor Knowles, please, as you haven't spoken.
Yeah, my comment about these is they seem to be designed to produce a green. Most of the targets, going back to targets and so on, a strategy has been agreed. Cabinet have agreed a strategy. The strategy will be discussed at Cabinet in 2023 or whatever it happens to be, and so on. In very, very, very few of these things, there are specific achievements, and where there are, there's no reference to what was expected or what was achieved last year, no comparatives, no anything of that nature. And that is the problem with these particular, for me, these key performance indicators. They are mostly subjective and not objective. I've got that right, yeah. And until we get more objective, we get more specific targets that we can see that what was achieved last year, what is the trend, what we've achieved, and what we expected to achieve on various things, then we never get anywhere with these things. They're all grand words again, but difficulties that the council have had. Housing has been a bit of a difficulty. We've been in measures for the last 18 months, 2 years, whatever. Problems with housing stock, is a major problem. Things that are problems, are sort of think these are corporate development words. And they're trying to prove that on corporate development and doing words, we're very good, which we are. It doesn't address items which need urgent attention with detail and with saying this is what we've done and this is what we've done and this is what we failed at. Because, you can put a figure out that says we've not done well at this, but it never happens.
You, Debbie.
When the corporate plan was adopted, every scrutiny committee was sent its list of measures and targets, and those were agreed when the corporate plan was adopted. So the housing one obviously does go to rural, and that is every time that is a red indicator on there, and they discuss that, and there's been numerous reports alongside that key performance indicator around delivering housing. So I think it is a point that when we come and do the corporate plan refresh, because obviously we are due a refresh, we do need to look at the KPIs and all of the measures. And obviously that will be the time when scrutiny will get to have input into all of those. And I completely agree, some of them are out of date and we do need to look at them. They're not exactly all now fit for purpose, but we just want to put on there of the ones that we have achieved and we have completed. We do obviously want to acknowledge that we did put in the corporate plan quite a few strategies which have since 2020 been agreed and approved.
Thank you. Councillor Green.
I just wanted the public record to formally acknowledge the fact that I twice invited Councillor Baxter to withdraw the comment, the accusation made about cabinet members and officers hiding material in general. I invite him to withdraw that once again instead of doubling down as he just did so. But otherwise, yeah, just wanted that on the record. And I think really the viewing public as well are the invisible attendees in this room, and they'll make their own judgments about our conduct today.
Thank you. Councillor Baxter.
Thank you. I'm happy to say it again and again and again while it's still true. And you're quite right. It's the people outside this meeting that we should be more concerned about. What I wanted to ask, Chair, was going back to Councillor Dilk's point from earlier on page 99 or 19, whichever page number you look at, talking about the leisure centres. I cannot believe the barefaced cheek of the leader to say that this report was, this green status was an appropriate part of this report at the end of September. It says clearly agreement, and this is our corporate plan, agreement of a programme of new build and refurbished leisure centres meeting the needs of the district. And he is saying that on the 30th of September, he thought that that was going swimmingly. What has happened in the last 6 weeks to overturn that to the point that instead of having £10.5 million to spend on Deepings Leisure Centre, we've now got zero and we want to hand back the keys. I cannot believe the barefaced cheek.
Obviously, Madam Chairman, no decision has yet been made, and that will be taken and discussed and debated tomorrow at its meeting on Thursday.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions on the KPIs? So are we happy to note the recommendations and contents of the 2022-23 mid-year performance report, and members to consider if any concerns highlighted by the report require additional investigation to be added to the work programme? I'll propose then. Anybody second? Councillor Johnston, thank you. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Those against? Abstentions? 2. Thank you. Thank you. Now we go to the telephony, can't pronounce that, I haven't got the right teeth in. System call handling performance. Thank you. And who's presenting? Claire, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. At the meeting of this committee on the 27th of September 2022, an action was requested for the committee to receive data on the calls handled within the customer service telephony system. This report sets out the information along with additional details regarding the service area inquiries handled by customer service and the factors influencing call volumes, the various contact types, proactive activities relating to performance, and the forward plan associated with these areas of work. As detailed in paragraph 2.3 of the report, the call handling is currently reported for those service areas where a customer will press 1, press 2, and so on. So this is not just customer service as a team, but calls that go to other departments in the council. This covers 15 different service types. The report advises average call answering of 31, as of the 31st of October, was 79%. I can advise this has since increased and call answering rate is 84%. As you will see in table in paragraph 2.7, this call answering rate was last achieved prior to Q4 in 21-22. Paragraph 2.8 provides context regarding the fluctuations relating to the number of calls received and calls answered. And most importantly, it gives an explanation as to why call handling has been reduced at a reduced level during Q2. As a reduction in staffing levels. I am again pleased to advise that customer service team have recruited 5.27 full-time equivalents. It will take time for them to be fully trained in the 16 service areas. Paragraph 2.9 provides this committee with more detail regarding the areas customer service answer calls for. Customer service do not just act as a switchboard function for these areas. In total, this is 16 service areas, some of which result in very complex inquiries where residents have multiple needs and calls can take much longer than average. Paragraph 2.11 provide this committee with details regarding the other channels customers have to access our customer service team. As you can see, for week commencing the 24th of October, as well as the 1,797 calls handled, the team also dealt with 1,099 inquiries from other channels. Over the last 6 weeks, performance clinic meetings have been taking place with the high-level contact telephone areas as detailed in paragraph 2.3. The meetings allow for customer service and teams to discuss any issues with the outcomes of recent meetings detailed in 2.13 of this report. Finally, paragraph 2.14 to 2.16 provides details of the key actions in place, not just for the customer service team, but for wider teams across the council. In addition to these actions, the customer experience strategy is being reviewed alongside the channel shift strategy. This involves investment in customer portals and website replacement proposal. This is to negate the need for customers to contact the council either in person or via the phone. I'm happy to take any questions you may have regarding the report.
Thank you, Claire. I know when we were asking for this report that you did ask for councillors who had issues to come forward and provide the details of dates and times when they had problems. Did anybody come forward with any?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We've had one request and that was dealt with and responded to at the time.
Thank you. Do I have any questions from anybody? Councillor Bax.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Most welcome. And I'm also interested in the numbers. And I think I've said about other issues that when you give someone data, it's like drug addiction. The more data you have, the more detailed data and the more regular data you want. So apologies for wanting to drill down. But the roughly one in five calls that do not get answered, do we have any idea of the length of time that people wait? Is it that everyone's waiting half an hour and then get fed up, or is it that they ring after 6 rings? Or do we as part of your analysis internally, do you do any kind of deeper dive analysis of which calls are being lost? It might be, I don't know, Monday mornings that we lose most calls, or it might be that calls after that are waiting more than 10 minutes are lost. Is that the kind of analysis we've done? Because I'd find it very interesting.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chairman. We do have that information, and that information is used to ensure that we do rota our staff accordingly. So quite rightly, on Monday morning, it is very busy. For customer service, we do have the staff that we can pull from each service area to deal with the queries that come through. As I've mentioned in the report, some of these stats are for back office service areas. And for those service areas, they may not have that flexibility to be able to analyse that information in as much detail. But certainly from the customer service point of view, yes, we know how long a call is waiting, what the average call answer time is, how long somebody's on a call, what the abandonment rate is. And from the point of that call coming to us and being abandoned, we have that time scale as well. So we are analysing that as part of all of the work that we're doing.
Thank you. So if I can come back, do you happen to know that number? What the length of time before abandonment or the length of time before the call is answered is?
Thank you. Through you, Chairman. I don't have that on me at the moment. It does fluctuate, and that can fluctuate from morning to afternoon, week to week, month to month. But if that is something that you would like me to include, I can look at that.
Thank you. Do I have any other comments from anybody? Councillor Johnson?
Well, I'm quite busy on the phone sometimes, especially with housing. And I have to say, there has been a marked improvement. I was one of the people when it first came here that found difficulty getting through, being able to talk to people. And I've got to say, there has been, in my opinion, a marked improvement. And I'd like to say thank you very much for the efforts.
Thank you. It is hard if we don't have hundreds of staff to answer phones, and we never will do. But I know through hanging on for many hours on some private sector calls and some government calls, where I've stayed on for 2 or 3 hours to get a response. So speak for yourself. So I do appreciate all the work that the officers do and answering the phones. Thank you. Do I have any other comments, Councillor Knowles?
I'd like to say, first of all, thank you for the efforts that's going into this. The ultimate prize will be when people stop ringing me and saying, I've strung around the council and I've run up for an hour, I've rung up 5 times, I've got nowhere, and I'm at the end of a tether with them. And a lot of people still think about a council like that. And when people stop thinking that way, that'll be the answer that we've done something serious about it. Just your comments there, Chair. I'm sorry to disagree. I worked in private industry. And we didn't miss any calls, and we didn't have thousands of people calling. We had a system that took calls, and if somebody waited more than 4 or 5 rings, the directors of that company would want to know why, because customers were important to us, and whether the tax office or the licensing or whatever else tax office or anybody else is no good at what they're doing, the doctors at Lakeside or wherever it happens to be, doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be. We should be as good as the best private company who regard customers as important and get to them and try to put them through to the right place at the right time fairly quickly. I do appreciate it can't be a first call on first ring every time, but we should be not seen kicking to be better than the Lakeside if the Lakeside is bad. But and yeah, we do Lakeside. I do Lakeside as well in Bourne, and they're hopeless. But we don't. That's not our target. That's not what we should be aiming at. Our aim should be for the best in industry allows, and that we should be able to service our customers like that.
And I hope some of the industry are listening, because I have been on the phone literally. I've probably wasted a day this year on private sector being hung on for 2 hours at a time and government sectors for 3 hours at a time. Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I would agree with Councillor Knowles. My experience with Lakeside is also challenging, I think you could say. So we definitely agree on that one. But look, with channel shift and everything else, we want customers to be able to get hold of us, whether that's through email, whether that's through telephone, or in terms of booking in-person appointments. I am delighted with the work that has gone on with the team. All I would say is that if members do have examples, and I've had it as well, where members of the public will ring me saying, I've tried ringing the council on 5 occasions. We have the technology where we can track their calls and we can find out. So please refer them on to Claire, and then we can actually find out how many times they have tried, and just to get that clarity, because I know our team are working incredibly hard, and quite often it's very easy to say, oh, they never answer the phone. I know I've had issues with routing and I can't remember what not tag team. There's a termination. What's the definition of that thing where it's the call? Yeah, where it's basically referring on to the next officer. And I know we've had issues with that in the past, but I know a lot of work's gone into it, so I would like to thank them for it as well.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was actually just going to say what Councillor Cook has said, so I just echo, and I do put that plea out that yes, if you have got examples, and please come to me as soon as you can do, so that we have got that technology to be able to look into it.
Thank you. Do I have any other comments from anybody? No. So we're noting that report, and thank you very much, Claire, for it. Right. The works programme. So we've got for February, grants and future high street funds, Q3 budget monitoring, housing stock condition update, and the section 106 monitoring report. Is everybody happy with that, or do we think we need to add something to it from the committee? No, everybody happy? Thank you. I would like to say thank you to all the officers for their presentations, and for everybody for all their hard work and for attending the meeting and answering all the questions today. Thank you very much. Do appreciate it. And now it's lunchtime. With close this meeting at 2 minutes to 1. Thank you.